An animal caught in a trap will gnaw off its own leg to escape. What will you do?
Brutal and unnegotiable. Now ask yourself, what would you do? There's no shelter, no fire, no gear. The night is closing in. Your hands are numb, your breath is shallow, and the cold is hunting you down like a silent predator. Out here, no one is coming. There's no hotline, no backup plan, no second chance. But there was a time when people survived like this every single day. No GPS, no modern tools, just stick stones, fire, and grit. And they didn't just survive. They adapted, they built, they passed down knowledge that still works and might be the only thing that saves you when everything else fails. They didn't wait for rescue, they didn't rely on gadgets, and they didn't have the luxury of failure. In the Middle Ages, survival wasn't a hobby. It was the only way forward. Villagers, travelers, outcasts, everyday people had to read the land harness, fire store food, and defend themselves. Not with gear, but with grit. Their world was built on ingenuity. A charred cloth that caught fire in the rain. A tripod made from branches that turned into a smokehouse. A hole in the earth that preserved meat without ice. These weren't inventions for comfort. They were answers to desperation refined through trial, passed through generations, and forgotten in the age of convenience. But forgotten doesn't mean gone, because today, when systems fail, storms hit, and the grid goes dark, it's not the gear you bought that matters. It's the knowledge you carry. 1. Tinderbox and Flint Striker. Fire wasn't just something you made, it was something you carried. In the medieval world, a blade might protect you, but fire kept you alive. No matter who you were, a traveling monk, a foot soldier, or a shepherd disappearing into the forest, you carried one tool above all, the tinderbox. At first glance, it was nothing fancy. A small wooden or metal container, sometimes wrapped in cloth or leather. Inside, a piece of flint, a carbon steel striker, and a blackened scrap of char cloth, usually linen or cotton scorched, until it caught sparks like dry bone catches a blade. Here's how it worked. Flint in one hand. Striker in the other. Strike fast and sharp. Sparks fly, tiny stars of heat. One lands on the char cloth. It doesn't flame. It smolders, just a glowing coal. But place that coal into a nest of dry grass or bark shavings, breathe slowly, and flame is born. It was a ritual, delicate, unforgiving, powerful, in cold wind or pouring rain when everything around you is wet and dying. That little ember is life, and it wasn't optional. No fire, no food, no light, no safety. Fire boiled water, cooked meat, dried clothes, sterilized wounds, warded off wolves, thieves, and fear itself. Every peasant family had some version of it. Some kept it in satchels, some tied it to their belts, some packed it in carved boxes sealed with wax or resin to fight moisture. Because if the tinder failed, you didn't get a second chance. In an age without lighters, without matches, the striker was a survival weapon, and fire was the reward for those who practiced. Modern survivalists still carry ferro rods or magnesium blocks, but the principle remains unchanged. Spark plus tinder or survival. That glowing ember isn't just heat, it's independence, it's defiance against the cold. It's proof that even in the darkest forest, even in the harshest storm, you can make light if you know how. And in that moment, as the flame catches and roars, you're not just surviving. You're standing side by side with every forgotten traveler who once lit their way with flint steel and willpower. 2. Folding wooden tripod. Before there were stoves, before grills, ovens, or cast iron, there was this 3 sticks, 1 knot, and fire. The folding wooden tripod was a masterpiece of simplicity. No screws, no nails, no tools beyond a hatchet and your own hands. But what it offered: cooking, boiling, smoking, drying, and survival. All in one. Here's how it worked. You cut 3 sturdy branches, roughly shoulder height, each one notched at one end. You lash them together tightly at the top with cordage plant fiber raw hide or braided bark. Spread them open, and you've got a stable frame over your fire. Now hang a pot, a kettle, a chunk of meat, or even a woven basket full of herbs or fish. Congratulations, you just built your own camp kitchen. But it didn't stop there. The same frame could turn into a smoking rack. After a hunt meat was sliced into strips and hung from crossbars laid across the tripod's shoulders, below a slow fire smoldered fed with damp wood moss or herbs. Smoke curled up, drying and preserving the meat sometimes for days. That meat would feed a family through winter or a traveler through the next mountain pass. In wetter regions, people added horizontal slats and racks between the legs, turning the tripod into a drying shelf. Mushrooms, roots, and even soaked clothing were given a second life with smoke and air. This tool wasn't just efficient, it was mobile. Fold it, carry it, rebuild it in minutes. If it broke, make another. No metal needed, no forge, just forest and foresight. And in a time when every calorie counted, when food spoiled fast, and when fire was the only refrigerator, this three-stick frame was the difference between hunger and strength. Today, bushcrafters still use it. So do off-grid homesteaders and military instructors. Because some ideas are too perfect to improve. Add a chain, use bamboo, swap the cordage. The material changes, but the lesson doesn't fire below. Survival above. Medieval people didn't buy this tool. They built it from scratch in the wild with only what the land gave them. And that's why it still works today. 3. Charcoal sand water filter. In the Middle Ages, water was a gamble. A sparkling stream might quench your thirst or poison your gut. One drink from the wrong puddle, and you could end up feverish, vomiting, dying slowly. And yet, medieval people didn't just roll the dice. They filtered, not with plastic tubes or chemical tablets, but with charcoal sand, gravel, and patience. The concept was simple. The execution was brilliant. Take a large clay pot, wooden barrel, or even a woven basket lined with cloth. Layer the inside from bottom to top like this gravel to catch leaves, twigs, and larger debris. Tightly packed sand to trap fine particles and cloudiness. Crushed charcoal, the real secret. Burnt wood, ground into coarse black powder. Cloth or moss to catch insects, scum, and anything floating. Pour dirty water on top. Wait. The liquid drips through each layer, slow, deliberate, and what comes out below clearer, cooler, sometimes even drinkable. Why charcoal? Because it doesn't just filter, it absorbs. Odors, toxins, microbes, even the foul taste of stagnant puddles. Charcoal was the medieval antibiotic for water. These filters weren't fancy. Villagers kept them near hearths or gardens. Some built them into stone troughs. Monasteries even carved permanent filtration channels using gravel-lined trenches and ash-filled basins to purify rainwater and snowmelt. But don't mistake simplicity for weakness. These filters saved lives in war, in drought, in plague. And today, off-grid survivalists still build them exactly the same way. Because in a blackout or bug-out, the first thing that kills isn't hunger, it's thirst. Sure, it won't kill every germ. It's not a miracle. But it gives you a fighting chance, and sometimes that's all survival really is. Not perfection, just one step ahead of death. So remember this. When you run out of bottled water, when the taps go dry, when your fancy filter cracks in the cold, there's still a way. Charcoal, sand, gravity. It's not modern, it's not pretty, but it's proven. And in the quiet drip of filtered water, you can hear the whisper of ancestors who refused to die thirsty. 4. Hot stone. Bed cold doesn't just make you shiver, it kills slowly, silently, without mercy. In the medieval wild, there were no thermal blankets, no sleeping bags, no heaters. And when the temperature dropped below freezing, the night became a predator. But medieval people had a weapon, not made of steel, but of stone. They built hot stone beds, a forgotten trick that turned freezing ground into radiant warmth, using nothing but fire, earth, and foresight. Here's how it worked. You start by collecting dense, dry stones, fist-sized or larger. Not wet, not brittle. Avoid river rocks. They can explode when heated. Then build a strong fire. Place the stones directly into the flames and let them absorb heat for an hour or more. Once glowing hot, use sticks or cloth to pull the stones out and bury them shallow in the ground where you plan to sleep. Maybe a trench, maybe just a dugout. Cover the stones with a layer of earth moss or leaves to insulate and protect your skin. Then lay your bedding, if you have any, on top. That's it. You've just built a radiant heat source that lasts for hours. As you sleep, the heat rises, slowly warming your back, keeping your core temperature stable and fending off hypothermia. And unlike fire, it doesn't flicker. It doesn't go out in wind. It doesn't give away your position in the dark. Hot stone beds were used by shepherds, mountain hunters, even traveling monks who had to survive alpine crossings or deep forest retreats. Some used them in snow caves where open flame was too dangerous. Others combined them with clay walls or thermal shelters to stretch warmth through the entire night. The secret wasn't the stone. It was the understanding of heat timing and terrain, a knowledge passed not in books, but in footsteps across cold soil. Today, few remember it. But those who do, military survival instructors, bushcraft experts, Arctic nomads, still rely on it. Because when your firewood runs low, when your hands are too numb to strike flint, the earth can still warm you if you know how to ask. This isn't comfort. It's not luxury. It's pure survival. And the moment your breath stops turning to fog, the moment the chill leaves your spine, you realize you're not sleeping on rocks. You're sleeping on fire. 5. Grease-soaked fire. Rope fire is fragile. You can spark it, feed it, build it up with your own hands, and still lose it in a gust of wind, a sudden rain, or a single careless moment. In the medieval world, fire wasn't just a tool, it was a companion. And keeping it alive meant staying alive. That's where the fire rope came, in an improvised invention, as raw as it was brilliant. A simple piece of twisted rope soaked in animal grease wax or resin. It wasn't designed to light a room. It was made to burn slow, steady, through the long, cold hours when flames flickered and firewood was scarce. Here's how they made it. Start with rope plant, fiber horsehair, or even twisted bark. Soak it in rendered fat tallow lard or bear grease. Once saturated, hang it to dry slightly until it's sticky but not dripping. Then coil it into a snail shape, light one end, and place it inside a fireproof container, a hollowed-out horn, a clay bowl, or even just a flat stone. It burns like a wick. Not fast, not bright, but reliable. Depending on the size and thickness, it could burn 1 to 3 hours long enough to keep coals hot until dawn, light a wet shelter, or revive a fire with a single breath. Shepherds hung them inside cloaks. Hunters stored them under blankets to keep warm while sleeping. Travelers used them to ignite new fires without restarting from scratch. Even better, it was portable. If you had to move, you could carry the flame with you wrapped in cloth, still smoldering like an ember in your pocket. Forget lighters, forget matches. This was the medieval pilot light, a symbol of stubborn survival. And in a time when failure meant freezing, this rope of flame meant continuity. Today you'll find modern versions fatwood wax-dipped jute paraffin wicks. But none of them beat the feeling of holding in your hands something you made from scratch using grease fiber and instinct. Because when the fire goes out and the world goes black, that little glowing thread becomes the difference between life and death. You don't need brightness. You just need fire that won't quit. 6. Clayball sling trap. Not every trap is meant to kill. Some are made to warn, to wound, to frighten, and sometimes that's all you need to survive. In medieval forests, food was scarce, and threats came in the night. Foxes stole chickens, boars raided camps, and not every peasant had iron traps or crossbows, so they made do with earth twine and physics. Enter the Clayball sling trap, a forgotten fusion of shepherd's sling and tension-triggered snare. Here's how it worked. Start with a ball of clay about the size of an egg. Shape it smooth, maybe embed a few stones for weight. Then sun-dry or bake it near the fire until it hardens like bone. Now tie it to the end of a stretched cord or green sapling bent under tension. Anchor the sapling to the ground using a trigger mechanism, a simple stick-wedge pressure plate or bait hook. Set the trap across a narrow trail, a chicken coop entrance, or near food stores. When an animal, fox, raccoon, even a curious dog triggers the mechanism, the bent branch snaps upward, flinging the clay ball toward the path of the motion. The result, a sudden whack to the flank skull or chest, not lethal, but disorienting, painful, enough to make predators think twice. And humans. It works on them too. Some medieval camps used these traps as early warning systems, pairing them with pebbles in pots, dried leaves underfoot, or slings rigged to snap and slap at intruders. It's crude, primitive, but effective, and most importantly, repeatable. If the clay ball breaks, make another. If the trigger fails, retie the cord. You don't need iron, you don't need noise. You just need pressure timing and mass. This kind of trap wasn't written about in royal hunting scrolls. It belonged to peasants, herders, and forest people, those who couldn't afford to miss a meal or lose one to a thief. In modern bushcraft, it's a reminder. You don't need modern weapons to defend yourself. You need creativity. You need patience. You need the will to protect what little you have. And sometimes all it takes is a rock, a string, and a good aim powered by a tree. 7. Ash toothbrush and hygiene. Hack survival isn't just about fire, food, and shelter. It's about staying alive long enough to use them. And nothing shortens life faster than infection. In the medieval world, there were no toothbrushes, no toothpaste, no antiseptics. Yet somehow, people kept their teeth. Their wounds didn't always rot. They survived. How with ash, salt, herbs, and instinct? Let's start with the teeth. Long before bristles and plastic tubes, people cleaned their mouths with sticks chewed at one end until they frayed like a brush. These chew sticks came from trees like willow hazel or birch, all with mild antiseptic properties. But the real secret was in the ash. After every fire, fine white ash was collected, cooled, and sifted. Mixed with a bit of water or even animal fat, it formed a gritty alkaline paste. This wasn't minty, it was medicinal. Ash scrubbed away residue, neutralized acid, even killed certain bacteria thanks to its high pH and salt content. Some added powdered charcoal or crushed herbs like sage or mint if they were lucky. But even without it worked. Peasants didn't brush twice a day. They rinsed with salt water, rubbed ash along the gums, used twigs like floss. They did what they had to because tooth rot wasn't cosmetic. It was fatal. An abscessed molar could become a jaw infection. A jaw infection could spread to the brain. And without antibiotics, that was it. But it didn't stop at the mouth. They boiled nettle leaves to clean wounds, used moss as bandages soaked in vinegar or wine, cleaned hands with sand and ash, scrubbed nails with twigs, even applied urine fermented for antiseptic use. Disgusting maybe, effective often, because in a world where one cut could kill, hygiene wasn't luxury, it was armor. Today we buy antiseptics by the bottle, throw away toothbrushes every month, but remove those conveniences and ask yourself, would you know how to stay clean? Not comfortable, not pretty, just alive. The medieval answer was clear. Use what you burn. Use what grows. Use everything, because the wild doesn't care how you smell, but it does punish infection. And when survival depends on your next breath, you'll learn fast, Ash, and grit might just save your life. You just walked through 7 survival tools, not from gear catalogs, not from YouTube tutorials, not from military-grade kits. They came from mud-bone fire and the hands of people who had no choice but to make them work. They didn't have more than us. They weren't smarter than us. They felt cold. They lost family. They faced hunger infection and winter like silent wars. But there was one thing they didn't do. They didn't wait to be rescued. No insulated tents, no vacuum-packed food, no water filters or heat packs. They had stick stone fat memory. They kept warmth in rocks, kept water in the ground, kept survival in bark, in rope, in a glowing ember passed hand to hand. And when we call them primitive, what we're really doing is surrendering our own skills, because every trick they knew still works. Every tool they made still saves lives. So when the lights go out, when your phone dies, your heater fails, and the shelves are empty, ask yourself, will you panic or will you remember?